Good Wednesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you were able to dodge the raindrops in Northeast Ohio. Welcome to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. Plenty of Browns to talk about. Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and Tim Bielik, also from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, will join us. The Browns, they decided it was time to dodge the raindrops as well, working out inside in the field house. A very nice thing that the Browns can do when inclement weather hits. Good look at the wide receivers, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Anthony Schwartz out jogging in pads. Nick Chubb, nothing jogging about that. Cut back and a nice run by the Browns running back. Baker Mayfield finds Donovan Peoples-Jones looking good inside the field house. Hey everybody, welcome to Sports4CLE. Some storylines. Denzel Ward back on the field for the Browns. Takk McKinley back on the field for the Browns. Anthony Schwartz, as you saw, along with Porter Gustin, back on the field for the Browns. Now, Greedy Williams not practicing on the field. Sione Takitaki, linebacker, not practicing on the field. And JOK, linebacker who had that weight room mishap, needed stitches, not on the field as well. JOK not expected to miss much time, but he did have stitches. Let's welcome in Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So Hayden, how good is it to hear Denzel Ward, Takk McKinley, Anthony Schwartz, Porter Gustin, all back on the field and making progress towards being available?
Definitely a good thing, Dave. And I think, again, when you look at all these injuries and these guys being held out, I think you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. We are still in the preseason. We are still not ready for the regular season yet. You know, there are going to be weeks where guys are put on are not practicing during the week and then end up playing on Sundays. So I think that could be a case with a lot of these guys. But for right now, it's just so much more efficient and so much more smart to just keep them on the side, let them work through their bumps and bruises. Definitely great to see Takk McKinley back. Don't know exactly what he was going through, but it seems to be a huge sigh of relief that he's back on the field, and his teammates are very happy to see him. Denzel Ward has kind of had that soreness that's lingered for a while. So definitely good to see these guys getting back, but I wouldn't read too much into anything when in regards to guys on the sideline. Again, if this was week one, if this was Kansas City, they would a lot of them would probably be out there. You'd have to see who would, there might be a couple that might miss the game, but we're in preseason. You got to keep them in some sort of bubble wrap at this point.
Absolutely, 17-game season, and keep in mind there's 2 weeks, not the normal 1 week. 2 weeks after the final preseason game this week before that regular season opener. So Kevin Stefanski asked, are the regulars going to get any action in this final preseason game? He talked about it. So did Joel Bitonio.
I will tell you before the game, I promise you, Tony. No, I'll announce it on Friday. I want to get through these next 2 days. We have a plan. I want to get through these next 2 days, talk about it, see how we come out of it, and then I'll let you guys know on Friday.
We don't really know yet. Coaches, we're going through a normal week of practice, and we're going to kind of fill it out, I think. But we're trying to get in the mentality of a regular season now, like Wednesday install and all those type of things. So we're trying to get more of a normal week, but we still have some camp elements, too. We're still going to compete a little bit against, ones versus ones and stuff like that in practice.
So, Hayden, would you play the starters at all? And again, I could be convinced either way. I think last year kind of proved you don't necessarily need preseason games. And with what is expected in an extra regular season game, I certainly understand not wanting to send some regulars out there and getting them banged up.
Yeah, I would not play their starters at all. I think especially with this offense, they're coming back into a very continuous group with all the players back. The starting 11 is going to be the exact same as last year. You have the same head coach, you have the same offensive coordinator, you have the same position coaches. So I would not worry at all about putting the offense out there. They got their work in against the Giants, and I'm good with that. Defensively, again, really wouldn't worry about it too much either. You don't want to have Myles Garrett out there. You don't want to have Jadeveon Clowney out there. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing maybe, a couple of plays from Anthony Walker, a couple of plays from John Johnson, but even then, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth playing any of the starters because you're not in a controlled environment. Guys could, end up making hits that are a little less than savory. It's not an environment where guys can come out and just be controlled in their environment. So I think for that reason, they got their work in against the Giants. It was controlled. There was no tackling to the ground. It was, they didn't get into a fight until after practice, which was just two guys. So I think that you got your work in. You don't need to worry about playing the starters, especially so close to the regular season.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, someone could convince me they should play. I wouldn't necessarily hold it against them. I think the risk is much greater than the reward, so I would agree with you, and I would tend to not do that. All right, time to listen to a voicemail of truth and reason from one of our viewers.
Shut the hell up about linebackers. Leave the linebackers alone. Stop making up stories that they're all injured and they're all hurt and everything else. They're getting their linebackers back. Everything is going to be fine. Shut the hell up.
Okay. Well, the linebacking core is banged up. It's not an opinion, it's fact. And you're not going to want to hear this voicemail of truth and reason, but the Browns signed a linebacker as a depth piece, T. Scales. Now, Scales is a guy, and this is a video from him at Coleraine High School. He is number 8 in this video. He has played 4 games with the Steelers last year, also originally undrafted free agent by the Rams in 2018, stints with the Colts in 18, Steelers in 19 and 20, Buccaneers in 20 as well, and was also selected by the Dallas Renegades 2020 XFL draft. But Hayden, again, clearly Andrew Berry and the Browns think they need some depth at that linebacking core for the back half of it. And sorry if you don't want to hear that, that's just the facts. You got to have enough bodies to be able to potentially do what you need to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect a guy like T. Scales to make the roster. I would expect a guy like maybe even Willie Harvey Jr. to make the roster. But still, yes, you need bodies. You need players to play in this preseason game. You lost Montrell Meander. You've lost, Jacob Phillips to this point, and you don't necessarily want to play guys like Anthony Walker Jr., Mac Wilson, Sione Takitaki too much. So yes, there is an issue at linebacker depth right now, but I think it's only for the preseason. Again, just because you don't want to play a lot of these guys. I think during the season, honestly, Dave, you're not going to see a ton of linebackers. You're going to see more of a 4-2-5 scheme where you have 4 guys up front, 2 linebackers, and then some, hybrid safeties / corners at work. So I'm not too worried about the depth of the linebackers in general, but definitely for this preseason, I would definitely, they're signing guys for a reason. So don't get worried about the regular season. Again, I think you'd have to be a little more concerned about the safeties and the cornerbacks because you're going to be playing a lot of defensive backs in a pass-happy league. But I agree that, yes, during the preseason for this last game, got to get your linebackers in there. And, again, they signed T. Scales. Maybe that's a guy that they can put in the practice squad. Willie Harvey Jr. has been around. Maybe he's another guy they can put in the practice squad. So you're going to be seeing a little bit less of the linebackers in the regular season. But for right now, it's certainly an issue that they have to address.
And the other thing is those linebackers are guys that play on special teams as well. And you don't want somebody that you're going to be counting on necessarily in passing situations or those kind of things to be a guy that has to run down and bust guys on the kickoff squad. So the back half of that linebacking core usually are special teams guys that you count on to make tackles. Well, a guy who kind of flashed a little bit in that final preseason game was Malik McDowell, a guy that veteran guy has had some issues on and off the field. Joel Bitonio talked about what he has seen from Malik McDowell.
I don't think I've gone against him too much, but you could tell why he was a second-round pick. When you see him play, he's big, he's explosive, he has power, but he has enough quickness to get your edge as well. If one guy's one-dimensional, it's a little bit easier to stop a guy, but no, he's done some really good things. I think you guys saw in the preseason game, he was pretty disruptive out there and done some things. Jack Conklin, who played with him, for a little bit at Michigan State, was saying that he looks like he's becoming his old self again, which was, pretty good. So, the more guys you have that are big, strong, quick on your D-line, that's always a positive.
And Hayden, that's a guy that, could earn a spot on this roster is Malik McDowell.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive line is something that the Browns have kind of addressed in terms of depth this year. You drafted Tommy Tokia, you have Jordan Elliott back there, you have Malik Jackson, you have Andrew Billings, and adding a guy like McDowell would certainly help that depth. He's a guy who, again, tremendous talent, a guy who was drafted in the second round at one point. And if he's looking to get back, and if he's back to, the guy that he was, the guy that Jack Conklin recognized, then certainly that could be a very valuable asset. So absolutely, you want to have Malik McDowell on the team, given his talent, given his strengths, for sure. I'm excited to see him, continue to get reps in the preseason. I think that's a guy you got to play. And if he continues to look like a man amongst boys, like he did against the Giants, I think there's certainly an opportunity for him to make this team and to even make an impact at some point.
Hayden Grove and I going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, you got to hear this one. There's a national guy who is hopping on the Browns bandwagon, and it's an unsuspected bandwagon jumper. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back with that. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. Well, those of you who have watched the show know Colin Cowherd not exactly always on the Browns side of things, but things are changing. Listen to Colin Cowherd on the Browns and this year.
How many articles have you read in the offseason where people have said this? Cleveland's got the second best roster in the AFC. And I believe that to be true. So why are they at 10.5? Why aren't they at 12? Why aren't they at 12.5? So I can't wait to watch it. I still think there's this reluctance about Cleveland, and ironically, I don't have it. My only question is, Myles Garrett stays healthy, and again, I'm not saying he gets hurt. I think they got rid of Sheldon Richardson in the defensive line, who I think's always been underrated. I think they're a little Myles Garrett dependent on that D line. But again, if you're going to be dependent on somebody, he would be the guy in the NFL. I'd be Aaron Donald to him. Those are the guys I'd be dependent on. So, but I still sense this well, I don't know.
Hayden, he's come around in the past couple of weeks because he was like that earlier in the offseason, but he does bring up a valid point. The defense does need Myles Garrett. I think that's a legitimate statement.
Yeah, I mean, you saw this defense without Myles Garrett last year, last year during COVID. And you've seen it without Myles Garrett during the 2019 season. There's no guarantee Myles Garrett's going to stay healthy, but I kind of agree with what Colin's saying. I think there's generally a distrust in Cleveland just because with the Browns especially, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong over the last 20 years, 22 years now, if my math is right. So I understand the reluctance, but when you look at the roster, you look up and down, the offensive line is one of the best in football. They have the two best backs in football combined. They have a quarterback who's up and coming, who's young, and who could potentially have a breakout season this season, who's been, has had a little bit of an up and down, but has great receivers, has great tight ends. Defensive line is veteran laden. It's a little bit deeper than people think. The linebackers are a little bit of a cause for concern. Again, not a ton of experience there and not a ton of, true talent there. You got your cornerbacks who are, some of the best in the league in Denzel Ward. You've got Greg Newsome. You got Troy Hill, who they brought in. And then you have safeties, Ronnie Harrison. You have John Johnson III. I mean, you got a really, really talented roster from top to bottom. And I think that reluctance just comes from Cleveland's history of issues from code, from whatever, literally anything. So I think that's where the reluctancy comes from. But I think Colin's right, is that fans should be able to buying into the Browns. I think that their roster is that good, and they had, a really, really good offseason plus a really, really good season last year. I think the confidence should be high. I think the momentum should be high, and I think that fans should be able to buy into this Browns team.
Yeah, the thing that's kind of ironic, and when you really go through and talk about the 20-some years, when you think about it, the guys on this team now were, 4 years old, 2 years old. Heck, Greg Newsome is just turned 21, so he wasn't even born. So that doesn't have any effect on the guys that will comprise the 53-man roster. And the head coach and the GM have only had success in those positions right now.
Yeah, and it does. You're right. The history is history. I mean, it's in the past. You got to look at the present. Even last year's in the past. As good of a year as it was, it's in the past. So I think the Browns are very focused on the here and the now and the present. I think Baker Mayfield has done a tremendous job of becoming a better leader and becoming the leader that this team needs. Kind of cementing this offense, cementing this team as a whole. And you're right. I think Baker said it best. Why not me? Well, I'm the guy to lead to turn this team around, and certainly he's done that. He's had some help with some tremendous talent around him, but certainly, again, he's kind of the face of the franchise at this point, and a guy that people are going to look to he knows as well as anyone that if the Browns are going to do anything, it's going to be because he plays well. So I certainly agree that the past is the past. Guys are young; they're too young to remember the horrible days, and they're here to change the narrative. They're here to change things. They're here to make new history and to make the Browns, back into the powerhouse that they've been for, quite a long time.
So one of the guys that we talked about, Greg Newsome, rookie, talked about the importance of John Johnson being a vocal leader and just how all the veterans have kind of rallied behind him, trying to get him comfortable in the NFL.
That's super important. The safety is another, Mike linebacker, the defense, he's another signal caller and, does all the important things out there to make sure we're in the right thing. And to have a guy like that, a vocal leader out there is amazing. He's like that in the meeting rooms and everything, like a big, playful, joyful guy. So it's great to have him out there for sure.
Make sure you've been lined up a couple times as he got you into the right spot.
Oh, for sure. There's sometimes, I'm locked in and I don't see motions and stuff like that, and he'll yell and get the call to me. So it's definitely important to have him out there.
John also said that when the coaches tell you something technique-wise, you always do it the right way. You do whatever they ask you to do. Where does that come from?
I mean, that's just having self-discipline. Obviously coaches teach things different ways. Like in college, I played a different technique than here, but I mean, every way they have to do it. I mean, they've been coaching for a long time, so they've seen success in the way they do things. So, I mean, it's just having discipline and just trusting in your coaches to put you in the right positions to succeed.
Is it important to you to show that to the coaches and teammates that you listen right away and follow exactly what they're telling you to do?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the biggest thing, from new coaching staff to new players, just, earning trust. And I think if you can do the things they say and not make the same mistake twice, then they'll trust you to, be out there on Sundays.
And again, you got to like what you hear from the rookie first-round pick.
Yeah, Greg Newsome's a guy that obviously the Browns honed in on for a lot of reasons, but certainly one of them is his maturity. A guy who definitely was a leader on that Northwestern defense, and a guy that seems to be very coachable, be very accountable, in addition to very talented. He seems to have a great head on his shoulders. So yeah, you're definitely hearing good things from Greg Newsome. You're hearing good things about John Johnson III and the rest of these defensive players, which is a great thing. So Greg Newsome, again, he doesn't seem to be afraid of the moment. He seems to let his talent speak for itself. He seems to work hard. He seems to take coaching very well, and that's what's going to make him a successful player. And that's why the Browns honed in on him when they did. Because they thought, not only does he have the talent, not only does he have the speed, the athleticism, but he has the head on his shoulders. He has the good background, the good coaching, and the good coachability that you need to be a great rookie.
All right, time for us to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one on Nick Chubb in the NFL's top 100. Chubb was ranked 26th, fourth-ranked linebacker, or running back, rather.
Hi, James and Tyler here. I'm watching you guys talk about the NFL's list and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, he averages 10 yards a carry in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line. No other running back did that. I don't know. I don't think there's three other running backs in the league that are better than him.
And Hayden, I could understand where a fan would say Nick Chubb's the best running back. I also could understand where you would say Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, or Delvin Cook. Those are the three that are ahead of him on the top 100. I think there are things that each of them do well, and anybody could make a case for any of those four being the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that part of the problem with Nick Chubb, and it's not a problem, obviously, but Nick Chubb has the best offensive line out of that group. I think Nick Chubb has the best backup out of that group. So I think that takes away from him a little bit when it shouldn't. Nick Chubb is obviously one of the most tremendous players in the NFL, not only from a production standpoint, from a talent standpoint, from a just an all-around standpoint. I think that when you look at the way that he goes about it, he just goes under the radar because he is just so quiet and so about the work, doesn't celebrate, not really into nicknames, not really into that kind of stuff, just goes about his business under the guise of darkness. And kind of like the Batman, he kind of works in darkness like the Batman. Doesn't need the bright light on him, doesn't need the spotlight on him, but can just go under the radar, which is so cool, which what Cleveland loves. They love to see that. So I think Cleveland is fine with them flying under the radar, like a guy like Nick Chubb, because again, he's going to go out there and he's going to prove people wrong. And I think, again, at the end of the day, I think he is one of the best three running backs in the league. But I think he'll take it as a chip on his shoulder that other guys are ranked ahead of him. He won't say anything about it, but he will, just do the work, put in the work, and come out and having another great season.
And it's important to note, as far as all the statistics in that go, and that's what a lot of those are based on, the fact that he shares carries with Kareem Hunt kind of works against him, but it will prolong his career because he's not taking the physical pounding that a guy like Derrick Henry has taken. And I just think long-term that's important to remember.
Yeah, I think that both of those guys bring the best out of each other. I think that Nick Chubb brings the best out of Kareem Hunt. I think Kareem Hunt brings the best out of Nick Chubb. I think they're the best when they're together. Thunder and lightning, whatever you want to call it, they really do bring out the best of one another, because when Nick Chubb needs a second, you don't get a break if you're a defense. You got to face Kareem Hunt. You got to face a guy who's super versatile out of the backfield. When Kareem Hunt's not in the game, then you got to go back to Nick Chubb, a guy who can run you over, a guy who's going to find the hole, a guy who's going to be patient, and who's going to move his legs really, really well. So they definitely can spell each other. I think that they're both very big advocates of each other. They're not worried about the numbers. They're not worried about who gets to touch the ball more. I think they're worried about the team and winning. And that's why I say they're a perfect combination. And if Cleveland can keep them together for the next 7, 8 years, and even maybe next 4 years, you never know, the NFL shelf life is short. I think it would be tremendous for both of them and for the Browns as a whole.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, CBS Sports has a preseason All-AFC North team. We'll tell you which Browns are on that. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking football with Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Kevin Stefanski spoke today about John Johnson and just how important his safety is to this Browns defense.
Yeah, he's not shy, which is good for that position because you do have to be communicating and over-communicating. He does a nice job of that. He's very thoughtful. I think the players really enjoy being around him. He's like having another coach out there on the field.
Did you know about his personality when you signed him, or is that something you continue to learn about?
I think continue to learn about for sure, but that was definitely in our research and our reference work. That was something that came out, just the type of teammate he was, the type of leader he was.
And Hayden, it's interesting. They kind of added a leader in John Johnson on the back half and a leader in the second level in Anthony Walker, and they've got Myles Garrett on that initial level with Jadeveon Clowney. They've got leaders throughout that defense, and that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, they do, and that's what they brought in. That's what they wanted to bring in. That's kind of something they were missing last year. I think B.J. Goodson was a good leader, but I think when you look at John Johnson, that's a bona fide leader in the back end. You have Denzel Ward, who's a bona fide leader in the cornerback room. You have Anthony Walker Jr., bona fide leader in the linebacker room, bona fide leader of that defense. Jadeveon Clowney joins Myles Garrett, leader even Andrew Billings, Malik Jackson, leaders, veterans, guys who've done it before, guys who can continue to do it. So I think John Johnson, the signing was huge. I think Anthony Walker Jr., the signing was huge. I think when you look at Jadeveon Clowney, the signing was huge. They did their research, and not only, again, this is something I can't continue to stress enough. Not only are they bringing in talented players, but they're bringing in talented players with culture fits, that are good role players, that are good leaders, that are good locker room presences, and I think that cannot be overstated. It's important. It's hugely important for this Browns team, especially on that defensive side, to have leaders where they really didn't a year ago. So now they have those leaders. They have guys that are going to step up and be, voices on that defense, which they desperately need.
Yep, and all about winning, the guys that they brought in as well. CBSSports.com preseason All-AFC North team. We'll start on the defensive side of the ball. They're flex guys, so that's a safety cornerback type, John Johnson. Cornerbacks, Denzel Ward, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. So Ward with a couple of the Ravens. Edge, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. Linebacker, Anthony Walker, Devin Bush. So they're two big free agent signings, according to CBSSports.com, in Walker and Johnson, among the best in the division.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, especially, Myles is going to be one of the best is the best edge rusher in football, in my opinion. TJ Watt not far behind. Denzel Ward, obviously one of the best corners in football and one of the best corners, obviously, in the AFC North. And then Anthony Walker Jr., you're right. I mean, you look at the AFC North, I think linebacker-wise, Anthony Walker Jr. is a guy that is certainly maybe not the name because he's new to the conference, but he's a guy who's going to put up the kind of production and be the kind of leader that the Browns need and that is going to show out in the AFC North. So, yes, absolutely think that they're right about all those. John Johnson, again, definitely going to make an impact. So I don't see any problem with that list.
Yeah, and Johnson and Walker kind of upgrade the speed at those positions, which is one of the things that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and particularly Joe Woods wanted to do with that defense, in the middle of that defense. All right, let's flip it over, look at the offensive side of things for CBSSports.com's preseason All-AFC North team. Running back, Nick Chubb. Wide receiver, Odell Beckham Jr., T. Higgins, Chase Claypool. Offensive line, Ronnie Stanley, then Jack Conklin, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, J.C. Treader. 4 of the 5 Browns offensive linemen best in the division.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. You look at the Browns offensive line. I mean, J.C. Treader is an all-pro talent, been around for quite a long time, veteran. Wyatt Teller, maybe the best right guard in the NFL right now, maybe the best interior offensive lineman in the NFL right now. Doesn't get a lot of pub because he is an interior lineman. Joel Bitonio, Pro Bowler, consistent in and out year after year. And Jack Conklin, again, the same thing. A guy that they brought in, on a significant contract from Tennessee because of his immense talent. So I think Jedrick Wills is even up there, at this point. I know he wasn't on the list, but certainly he's, if not one of the best 5, definitely one of the best 7 to 9. It's a great thing. It's a great thing to see all those Browns there. Again, Cleveland is built. Cleveland loves having that offensive line. Cleveland's a hardworking, gritty, take no crap league or city, and the Browns having that offensive line just kind of goes to show what kind of football they want to play. So you add Nick Chubb into that mix, a great running back. You add Odell Beckham Jr. into that mix, a great wide receiver who the Browns needed at times last year and didn't have. It makes a lot of sense. That those are the positions, those are guys were named to the best in the division.
So Joel Bitonio talked about just kind of the importance of winning this AFC North, and that is obviously the goal of the Browns.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to get in the playoffs is win your division, and as a team, we're really taking it one week at a time, but those games count for more. You can go. We've seen it with the NFC East. The team hasn't been that dominant, but they get into the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, you don't know what's going to happen. So that's always a goal, is to win your division. I know we have some. I feel like every year you look at it and you have some real tough competition. You know what I mean? The AFC North is always tough, and I think it's not going to change this year. Well, I've only played in the AFC, like you said, but
play against the teams from the other.
Right. There's just physicality about it. You know what I mean? I know other teams have fullbacks and things like that, but there is a physicality, and I think it just starts with the mentality of like Baltimore's defense, Pittsburgh's defense, and the players that they have on their defense have kind of made it that way. And then, you bring in running games like ours in Baltimore, like it kind of has to be physical or, nothing's going to happen out there. So it's a physical division for sure. And you have, those Sundays, it's a little bit tougher than other ones.
And you saw Joel kind of smiling as he said it's a little bit tougher and a little bit physical or more physical in the North. And those offensive linemen are going to like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just that's the AFC North. That's the Cleveland Browns. That's what it is at this point. I mean, they like to ground and pound the ball. They like to be physical. They like to be nasty. And the Browns certainly love, the fact that they are, one of the more physical, grinded out teams. And Joel's right. The AFC North is a lot like that. You've seen that with Pittsburgh for years. I think you're going to see that with Pittsburgh again with Najee Harris. You have that in Baltimore with J.K. Dobbins. You have it with Lamar Jackson. You had it for a little bit in Cincinnati with Joe Mixon. So the AFC North knows how to run the football, and the guys up front are certainly some of the most gritty and tough and grinded out guys. And I think that that's the way the Browns want to play. They want to be a very balanced team, but if they can't run the football, they're not going to be a air it out kind of West Coast style team. They're going to be, hey, we want to do play action. We want to use our tight ends. So I'm excited to see what they do this year with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, and again, AFC North is going to be a tough one with the Ravens and the Steelers again this year, without question. Hayden Grove and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we'll hear someone from ESPN talk about how far Baker Mayfield can take the Browns this year. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions, lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Kimberly and Martin on ESPN's Get Up this morning. How far will Baker Mayfield take the Browns this year?
Listen, everything I'm hearing out of Berea is that Odell and Baker, they've been working together before, during, and after practice. The two of them are on the same page. So as long as they're joined at the hip, I feel really good about the Browns' chances this year.
And Hayden, we're hearing the same thing, that there's a lot of work that's going on the side before, in the off season, to make sure that that chemistry exists.
Yeah, I think that obviously it's super important to have chemistry with a guy like Odell. I think it's, it shows just how hard Baker's working, how hard Odell's working to make sure that they are ready to go. But at the same time, I think that Baker knows now, and I think it's actually a valuable lesson that he learned last year, was that you can't just force the ball to Odell. You have to take what the defense gives you. And I don't think Odell's worried anymore about putting up 1,000 yards or putting up 10 touchdowns or whatever. I think he's worried genuinely about winning. And I think that's going to be more important than any route running, than any timing. Obviously, timing and route running are important, but it's more important for Baker Mayfield to understand, hey, here's the defense, here's the look the defense is giving me. Odell might not be open on this play, but that means DPJ might be open, or that means Jarvis Landry might be open, or that means Austin might be open, or that means David might be open, or that means Kadero might be open. So at times last year, I think Baker felt a responsibility to look Odell's way. And also sometimes it can be a little bit of safety valve because Odell, again, does make fantastic catches, does do things a lot better than most wide receivers in the NFL. So if there's nothing there, when in doubt, throw it to Odell. And obviously sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I think that it's great that they're going to get back on the same page. I think they have chemistry for sure. I think they enjoy the hell out of each other. And I'm really excited to see now that they've had even more time to get to know each other, to throw the ball with one another. I'm excited to see what's going to happen in year 3 of this experiment.
Yeah, and I would concur. So we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Got another one. This one on Baker Mayfield being the leader of the Browns.
Hi, Dave. With all the talk and opinions concerning Baker Mayfield in the national media, it all adds up to this scenario. Baker Mayfield is the best leader to take this talented offense of the Browns and lead them to many victories, playoffs, and to the Super Bowl. He has proven his whole football career that he can accomplish and succeed in everything he works at. He does not have to be the greatest quarterback of all times. All he has to do is bring out the best of his talents and leadership, and we'll all see a Super Bowl championship team.
All right, and Hayden, that's an important point there. He doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the NFL. He does have to be the best quarterback for the Browns and Kevin Stefanski. And I think that's the other thing to keep in mind with Kevin Stefanski. So not only did he learn what Baker Mayfield can do, he also now kind of sees where Odell Beckham Jr. can be used in this offensive scheme as well.
Certainly. And Baker, again, I think Baker understands very much that he has to be like you said, the quarterback that he needs to be. He doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the NFL. He doesn't have to do things that certain other quarterbacks have to do because, again, Baker is a guy who does have a ton around him at this point, and he's just got to be able to distribute, to lead, to be the guy in the locker room that they need him to be. And I think he can be that. And I think because he knows that, because he understands that, because he does have all the talent around him, I think he's kind of an MVP dark horse. I think he's a guy that, if the Browns play their cards right and everything stays in the same way and improves the way that it should, I think Baker Mayfield, can use all of his targets to the best of his abilities. He can use a newfound DPJ, that has really come onto the scene. He can use Jarvis Landry the way that he has for the past 3 years. He can use Odell Beckham Jr., who's back and healthy. He can use Nick Chubb. He can use Kareem Hunt. He can use Austin Hooper. He can use David Njoku. He can use Harrison Bryant. He can use Kadero Hodge. He can use Hollywood Higgins. I mean, the names are endless. And I think if he can do that, that's exactly who the Browns need him to be. They need him to be the distributor, the guy that reads the defense well, the guys that knows his calls, knows his checks, knows what he's looking at, and makes accurate throws. And again, it doesn't always have to be spectacular, but again, he can dink. Sometimes he's going to have to dink and dunk the ball down the field. Sometimes he's going to have to make a great throw here and there. I think Baker Mayfield is the perfect fit for the Browns as currently constructed, and I think he's the Browns quarterback for the long-term future. And I think this year is just going to be the first step in what will be a great career for him in Cleveland.
So The Athletic has they polled 33 agents from across the NFL. So these are guys that represent players. Who will win the Super Bowl? Number 1 was the Buccaneers. Number 2, the Chiefs. Number 3, the Bills. The Browns were one of a couple of other teams who received votes. And again, those are guys that represent players. So that's a pretty good indication of some respect around the league.
Well, again, when you listen to Colin Cowherd and you listen to everybody else who said the Browns have a top 3 roster in the NFL, it's hard for me to imagine. Again, I think the only skepticism with the Browns is just that they've been the Browns for the last 21 years. I don't think if you look at they have the reigning coach of the year. They have the same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator, same quarterback, same offense as a whole. They added a bunch of pieces to that defense: John Johnson, Anthony Walker Jr., Jadeveon Clowney, Troy Hill. You have studs in Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. I mean, where is the trepidation when it comes to the Browns? I mean, again, the trepidation is from the Freddie year where things did not go very well. So I think for that reason, I think that the Browns should be in the top 3-4 of teams. I mean, again, they were one drive or one play, you could say. I mean, maybe if Hollywood Higgins doesn't get speared in the head and the ball doesn't fly out of bounds or into the end zone, maybe the Browns are in a position where they are in the AFC Championship game and they are playing the Buffalo Bills. So I think they're right up there with the Bills. I think they're right up there with the Chiefs in the AFC. And obviously, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, and you got to give him, more of the benefit of the doubt than anyone else. But I think the Browns are a top 5 Super Bowl contender, certainly, and top 3 in the AFC.
Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Hayden, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns football. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com will join us. More Browns straight ahead. We'll hear about Greg Newsome and how important the veterans have been to his development. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine and too late at night. But feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns football, and word out of Berea, the Browns making a little bit of a roster move as we get this tweet from Mary Kay Cabot. Kyle Marquay was claimed by the Browns via waivers, was cut by the Rams to make room for him. They cut Romeo McKnight, defensive end, Marquay tight end from South Carolina. Was on the Browns practice squad last year as well, so could end up being that fourth tight end or could be a practice squad guy, but Browns will get a look at him. Well, one thing that has been impressive has been Greg Newsome. The first-round pick looked very good in the preseason games. Newsome talked about his development and how important the veterans in that secondary have been to that development.
There's still some steps that I got to take, but I think, last week, against the Giants, I took a big step in just going out there and just playing free. And, I got to thank a lot to my coaches who, like I said, have a bunch of trust in me to go out there and do the right thing. And then I got some of the best teammates and some of the best vets out there in my room that tell me to just go out there and just play freely. Like every single time they tell me to just go out there and trust yourself and do what you do. And, without those guys, I think I would still be a little bit behind, but with them, I think, like I said, last game I took a huge leap in just trusting myself and playing fast.
When did that happen? Was it right first, second snap, or did you take you a while in the game and you were like, oh my, it's finally clicking? When did you realize it?
Yeah, I think honestly from the first game, first game always you have jitters and things like that, but when I got out there and guarding a guy, who's been in the league for a long time and having some success, just like built my confidence. So going into second week, I was like, okay, I belong, and I know that I got to change some things, but I'll be ready. And, I mean, it also helps that we practiced against them twice, so we kind of already, it's like you already schemed them a little bit, so that helped as well. But it really started from the first game.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. And Tim, the guy he's talking about that he covered in that game against Jaguars, Marvin Jones, been in the league a long time. But it's really good to hear a rookie feel like, he belongs this early. And you got to credit the veterans for making him feel like he belongs.
Yeah, veterans definitely play a huge role in, how a young guy adapts to the league. And the big thing that I took away from that is, talking about how he talked about how he felt like he was playing more freely against the Giants. And I think that's always the thing with young players. You look for guys who react more than are thinking, because if you're playing more freely, if you're playing more off instincts and second nature, then you can more react, because when you're thinking and then reacting, that's when you're a step slow. And in the NFL, one step is all a guy needs to make a play on you. So if you get it down to reaction, where you can react more quickly, like Newsome said, talking about his skills, trusting what he knows how to do, that's where you can see a guy really start to take off a little bit. And it seems like the last few weeks, Newsome has really started to step up.
Yeah, and you keep hearing the veterans praise him, never making the same mistake twice. Same thing that Kevin Stefanski has talked about with him. Another rookie, James Hudson. That's an intriguing guy. Offensive lineman, switched to offensive line from defensive line in college, late in his college career. Hudson talked about his first 2 preseason games with the Browns.
I would say that I did some good, did some bad as well, but looking to improve it. Still coming out here every day, looking to learn from Coach Callahan and Coach Peters, just keep improving on what I'm doing.
What's like the main message that Coach Callahan has for me?
Really just improving my technique, cleaning up some footwork things, just finishing better.
And Tim, this is a guy that's really intriguing because he doesn't have a lot of experience at offensive line. He's kind of getting a master's level training course from Bill Callahan here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to learn how to be an offensive lineman in the NFL, few guys better than Bill Callahan. I mean, you look at what he did a year ago. Obviously, you take Jedrick Wills, a guy who has never played left tackle in his life, especially in an offseason where they didn't have any in-person work until training camp, and Wills becomes a more than serviceable starter left tackle. Hudson's always been interesting to me. I felt like this year almost seems like a redshirt year for Hudson, because you have 3 veterans at tackle ahead of him, in Wills, in Jack Conklin, in Chris Hubbard, where you can really let Hudson be patient, develop, just learn through practice and all those different things. And eventually, when his number is called, hopefully for him, it's not for another year or 2. So he has that time to really learn, to really understand his craft more. And like you said, to focus more on technique, which is always important when it comes to offensive line and the play of an offensive lineman. The more he kind of gets that going and the more he kind of learns behind the scenes, the better off I think he'll be. Like I said, he's a guy that, he's a futures guy that probably in the best case scenario, you don't see him for another year or 2 when he's ready to kind of be a swing guy.
Yeah, and Kevin Stefanski talked about Hudson and what the coaching staff has seen from him.
He's had some really good moments and some moments where, he's a rookie, and that's to be expected. We just want to get consistency from him. Playing both sides is not easy, and so we're pushing him, and I think he's responding well.
Playing him on both sides, is that to ideally get him ready if he needs to be that swing tackle? I mean, in case, something happens to Chris or...
Yeah, exactly. Any young player, you want to see what they can handle. Certainly for tackles, you got the ability to play both sides if you're not starting is really important. For guards, you typically want to see if they can snap at center, so it's just building his versatility.
And again, versatility will earn him a spot, and the Browns like what they see as far as what they can mold and work on those techniques.
Of course, and I think it goes back to the upside stuff with Hudson, that what you see now is potentially not what you're going to see in a year or 2 years when he really starts to understand the game. And I do like the idea of, working him on both sides so you can kind of see where he's going to be better, where his future kind of lies in the NFL, whether he's going to be a left tackle for his career or a right tackle or a guy that he could put at either side, you know, in a swing situation, depending on what goes on. So obviously Hudson's a guy you focus more on the future of, but, you know, he's definitely gotten a lot of experience, you know, played a ton of snaps in the first 2 preseason games, you know, with the starters really not playing at all. So he really got quite the indoctrination in the first 2 games. And I think that's something that can only be good for him down the road.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how he develops as the season goes along. All right, so we mentioned Jedrick Wills, left tackle, who was the 10th overall pick a year ago. What better guy to talk about how he's developed from year 1 to year 2 than Joel Bitonio, the guy that plays right next to him at left guard. Here's Bitonio on Jedrick Wills.
Last year, he was just trying to figure out how to be a left tackle, you know what I mean? He was going against OV and Miles every day in one-on-ones and stuff, and there was some rough film, you know, to watch and go over, and now he's battling. I mean, he still has to go against Miles and Jadeveon, so it doesn't get much easier, but you know, he's had time and he's developed, and he's a left tackle now, and now he's just refining some of those things, and he understands, like, he did some really good things, but to take the next step, you know, there's a couple little things that he's been really working on in training camp, and you can see that he's focused on those and really, you know, making those strides.
And again, Tim, I was really impressed by last season. You didn't notice Jedrick Wills, which means he was not a liability as a left tackle who had switched over. And for him to be able to do that without a preseason, without a training camp, I think he's going to take a huge jump. I really think working with Bill Callahan every day and just kind of the kind of determination and grit you saw from him, I think he's got what it takes to be a really good left tackle for a long time.
I agree. And I mean, he's a younger guy. There's no question about it. He came into the Browns very young, not just having that in addition to moving sides of the offensive line from the right side to the left side. And, you know, what Joel was saying, you know, when you move to the left side, switch sides on the offensive line, obviously you're going to have to change how you do almost everything, you know, from hands to how you set your feet as a lineman. And you kind of touched on it earlier. The best thing we could say about him is that you really never heard much of him from him. And if you're an offensive lineman, the best thing for you is for your name never to get called on the broadcast, you know, or for the referee to say your number if you commit a false start or whatever. And Wills is certainly a guy that, you know, he's got tremendous upside, and he showed plenty of good ability, I think, as a rookie. So no reason to think he shouldn't make a jump up in his second season, and playing alongside a guy in Joel Bitonio who's got Pro Bowls under his belt. He's gotten so much experience under his belt. There's no question that, you know, that Bitonio has to have been good for Wills, and certainly bodes well for him having a chance to really take a step up this season.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. And I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, a national pundit answers who is under the most pressure this season. We'll also hear Kevin Stefanski on Anthony Schwartz. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Max Kellerman from ESPN's First Take. Who is under the most pressure in the NFL this year?
There was a chemistry issue with Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield. And you and I were discussing this, I don't know, about a year ago or so.
Yeah, because I was told that, yeah.
Yeah, same. That Odell would be better off somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. Odell Beckham is not a guy who's going to say, I need the ball more, right? If, because they're bracketing him, because they're putting 2 guys on him, whatever it is, other guys are open and that's being taken advantage of. He starts chirping when, wait a minute, I'm not getting the ball and we're losing? Hold on. I thought I'm not getting the ball. Someone else is open. Get him the ball. But Stephen A., he'll be 29. He's turning 29 this upcoming season. It ain't cute anymore, right? Like, his prime is fast slipping away if it's not already gone. Not that long ago, he was always mentioned. He, Antonio Brown, and Julio Jones, the 3 best wide receivers in the game. Is he still mentioned that way? Now, coming off an 11-win season where they go to the playoffs, and we saw Baker Mayfield blossom without Odell on the field, he knows he has to fit in. He has to ball out. He's part, and not only that, but more than that, more than any other non-quarterback, he will be looked at if his team regresses.
Maybe. It's kind of interesting, though. Antonio Brown and really Julio Jones aren't mentioned as the top receivers in the game anymore. It's usually DeAndre Hopkins and Davante Adams, but that happens as you get a new crop of guys in. And the one thing I would say about Odell Beckham and Baker Mayfield is Kevin Stefanski didn't have enough time really to figure out how to get Odell incorporated into the scheme and play to his strengths because Odell got hurt. I think that will make a difference. There will be calls and plays and schemes where they figure Odell will get open and Baker will find him.
Of course, yeah. And there's been all the reports of camp of Baker and Odell really working out to the side, really trying to work on that timing to get it right, to get them in sync because the Browns know they're going to need Odell Beckham to really go where they want to go. I mean, we saw that against Kansas City where the Chiefs corners really manned up against the Browns receivers and made it difficult for them to really create space. Now, Baker made some tremendous throws to get them some big yards, but if you have a guy like Odell, and we saw that in the game against Dallas last year where he's so difficult, if not impossible, to cover one-on-one in his athletic best, that's when, a scheme opens up. That's when a defense opens up and when you can create opportunities for others. And with the way the offense grew over the last half of last season and into the playoffs, it could have just been more of a fact that, they got comfortable with the system. I mean, again, they didn't have a preseason last year. They were just they didn't even have a mini camp or an OTA. They didn't have a chance to get together and really work on any of this. Training camp was the first time they could really get into anything surrounding what the offense was putting the offense together last year. This year, you got a full off season. You had Camp Baker in Austin, where, he's getting timing down with all these receivers. Odell Beckham's the biggest big play guy they have right now on the roster. I agree with Max Kellerman that he's a guy who's under a lot of pressure. I don't know if he's under the most pressure, though, but, it hasn't worked for him the first 2 seasons, certainly with things that are out of his control. Year 3, if he's healthy, this is a year we just got to find a way to get things done.
Yeah, I would agree. And keep in mind, he's been banged up as well. There were minor injuries, minor because it wasn't, a torn ACL that he's going through the last offseason, but he was never quite right. So that's important to note as well. So Bleacher Report, 1 trade each NFL team should propose before the season. I don't agree with this one. Odell Beckham to the Bears for Akeem Hicks. And there is no way I'm doing that if I'm the Browns.
I wouldn't either, just because I still want to see what you have in Odell Beckham Jr. from the Browns. I understand it to an extent because Akeem Hicks is one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. But again, I just think the explosiveness of Odell Beckham is something that I don't know if the Browns have elsewhere in this receiving core. I know there's a lot of buzz around Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's got speed. He's got athletic ability. He's very good at that, but we haven't really seen it happen consistently. Again, when I talk about Odell, I talk about the Dallas game. He's a guy who can single-handedly take a football game over and win it for you. I don't think the Browns have another player at receiver like that. It seems like they're trying to make this work. And I think with talents like Odell and Baker on the offense, you want to try and find a way to make this work.
Beckham and that big playability should only help the running game as well with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have Odell out there, you're forcing those safeties to play back a little further to respect that deep speed. And then when you have those 2 backs in there, and you can really rotate those guys in to keep them fresh. We saw at times just how devastating that running attack can be, particularly in the first half of the season when Odell was healthy. You know, those guys can really wear teams down. And that's the other element Odell brings. It's not just opportunities for him. It creates for everything else because everybody knows what a threat Odell Beckham is. You have to respect that. And it just opens up opportunities for everybody else that they probably wouldn't get otherwise.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're all out of time on this edition of Sports for CLE. See you again tomorrow. Scheduled guests Mac Robinson and Ryan Kavanaugh to talk high school football tomorrow at 4. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everyone.